On today's show, Christmas is here in Penhold as the town's community Christmas starts the holiday season with a festive success. CBC provides Canadians with a helpful list of 18 offensive words you should avoid. We'll make sure you know them. And the federal opposition party decides not to be the opposition. And we'll close with a Christmas movie, maybe for after the kids go to bed. This is Penhold Talk Radio. And welcome to the show. Merry Christmas. It is December. We are allowed to say that now. I am Brian Constantine. I am here with my co-host, Michael Rowland.
Hello, hello.
Let's start off with the Penhold Community Christmas. It was held about a week ago now. The Penhold Community Christmas kind of kicks off the season around here, as most of us know, and it's probably... I don't know. It's got to be pretty close to the Fall Festival as far as, community engagement goes, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. It's one of the very central events to the Penhold community.
Yeah. And for the last couple years now, we've had to adapt with some of these restrictions in place. But nonetheless, this year, the turnout was crazy as far as my experience of it goes. The cars were lined up down Waskesiu Ave, all the way down to Lucina, I think.
Oh, wow.
Almost to Lucina for a solid hour, if not an hour and a half. I was up near the Tunnel of Lights, kind of manning some of the technology that we had going on up there. And all I could see was a string of lights going all the way down from the moment we started. So it seemed like a crazy turnout. Good for you, Penhold. I think a lot of people probably waited in their cars for a long time.
Yeah.
So your patience is well commended. I didn't hear any horns honking out there. So that seemed to suggest that there was a good spirit out there. I think if hopefully we don't have to do this Tunnel of Lights drive-through. I think it's a really good idea. It was really a nice adaptation, I think.
Yeah, the town has done a phenomenal job of adapting these events to accommodate whatever restrictions are in place and often accommodate them pretty rapidly. So they're doing really well at it. Yeah,
I guess there was a number of community groups there handing out goodies as people drove through the Tunnel of Lights in front of the multiplex. I guess just if we had to do this drive-through again, maybe do a dual lane process this time.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of people coming through. But overall, it was well run. I think I saw a lot of smiling faces, even from the carolers out in the cold scene, and we even dragged the library's piano out to the front.
Right, I saw a picture of that. I missed out on driving through, but I did see some pictures.
Carrie,
that was pretty good.
Yeah, Carrie was going around taking pictures of the scenes, of the atmosphere. And if you're not familiar with who Carrie is, Carrie Black. She is I can't remember her exact title, but basically she's the community events coordinator or communication coordinator, something like that. And so basically she kind of directs and guides a lot of these community events. Now, I think she would be quick to recognize that these are very much collaborative events among a lot of community groups.
Yeah.
But Carrie does I think a lot of behind the scenes work to kind of organize and kind of guide make sure all the parts are in place.
Yeah.
Everything is everyone's getting what they need to run one of these events smoothly. So, thank you, Carrie Black, for putting this together and many other events, especially during these last 2 years. I couldn't. It's certainly not something I would be eager to take on board at those times.
Not an easy job at this time.
Especially someone in kind of the government setting. For me as a private citizen, I can scoff and be maybe a little bit of a lawbreaker when it comes to all these ridiculous restrictions that we got going on here. As someone in the administration of the town government, they don't have quite that liberty. they unfortunately have to play a little more strict to the rules. And so she's able to do so and still pull off a lot of these events. So worth a shout out there.
Yeah, definitely.
And so yeah, Christmas is on full tilt here in Penhold. I've noticed more Christmas lights around town. People putting their lights up.
It's lighting up out there.
Yep. And just I'll put this out here. Maybe just put a little more burden on myself. I'm wondering if I shouldn't go out and do like a little Penhold Christmas lights video.
That would be pretty interesting.
Put a little Christmas music to it, and you can sit home and kind of do a town tour just at home. Yeah, I don't know. So if I do, don't be surprised if you have lots of lights in front of your house and some guy with a camera is like spending 15 minutes walking back and forth in front of your yard in the dark. You come out and say hi. I'm not usually too scary. But yeah, that's probably me then if you see me wandering the streets at night, wandering with a camera.
Should probably run it by the peace officers first so that they have some kind of warning about the stalker guy walking around town.
Right. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, this is their heads up. All right, our next story. Before we get to our next story, I want to give a little bit of my own story. Just kind of set this up. About 14 years ago, I was in Bible college, and one of the courses we had to take was public speaking. And you know, the idea here, of course, is that, you know, going to Bible college, one possibility is that likely possibility is you're going to do a lot of public speaking, whether it's preaching or just talking to groups. So there's a good public speaking course that I was taking one semester, and so we were going over different types of speeches, looking at famous speeches, why they work so well. Looked at different ways of delivering speeches, whether it's by, you know, written out or if you're just going through just notes. And I definitely prefer having mine written out. But one class that we did was an impromptu speech. So you were just kind of given a topic that you quickly had to kind of think on the spot and give a little 5-minute speech about. And I think for this one, the prompt was, there's outside the classroom, there's just a box of random stuff. Random things that you might find around an office or something like that, or a home. And for some reason, as I was standing out there outside the classroom, where each person was sent out the classroom to take a look at this box, and then they'd come back in a couple minutes and give a speech on whatever they picked from the box. And for whatever reason, I pulled out a pair of gloves from the box, and I ended up proceeding to come into the classroom and berate them essentially for their discrimination, or at least society's discrimination against amputees. Because you see, every time you go into the store, to buy a pair of gloves, they come in a pair. And so it ends up normalizing people with two hands. Now think that this is 14 years ago. Okay. So, something happened, 14 in that class. And it was one of the most hilarious speeches because everyone saw how ridiculous it was. Yeah, it was hilarious.
In those days, that was a very comical thing to do.
Right. It makes sense. Nowadays, I have no doubt there are listeners who are like, you did what? How could you? Or like, yes.
Or they're in agreement. Yes.
You should be right to society for only selling things in pairs. But yeah, the joke landed and it was just hilarious. It's just one of my funniest memories I have, laughing so hard. I couldn't finish the speech. It was just too perfect. It was just too much fun. Now, okay. So that is to set up this story from the CBC. The CBC has put out a story titled "Words and Phrases You May Want to Think Twice About Using." And it gives you 18 words that you should now avoid because they are either they either have what the so-called experts deem as having racist or sexist origins, etymologies, to use the big fancy word, or someone just finds them offensive.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's the criteria. And so this is why it ties back to my story, is that these words now, and the thinking that produced the hilarity 14 years ago in that college classroom is now what produces these serious pieces in CBC. Like these are going to be serious words that we're going to go through. Serious people are presenting these in a serious way. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Like this isn't an April 1st kind of Babylon Bee kind of article.
It's not The Onion. It's not Babylon Bee. This isn't parody.
This isn't parody. Isn't satire. Here's kind of the opening paragraph of this article. Have you ever casually used the terms spirit animal, first world problem, or spooky? It might be time to rethink your use of these phrases and remove them from your daily lingo. First of all, I don't think those are part of my daily lingo. I don't think they're part of most people's daily lingo. But think about that. So those are 3 words on this list: spirit animal, first world problem, and spooky. And remember, these are all words that this article is going to try to argue should be limited. You should censor yourself from saying these words because there's someone out there who's going to take offense to it. So, perhaps the funniest part of this article is the fact that they group all these 18 words and phrases in a big colorful collage at the top of the article.
Yeah.
So if you want to share this article, this is the thumbnail that comes up. All these
Right.
apparently super offensive words that you should eliminate are all just rainbow colored, kind of a word art display.
Yep.
On your thumbnail across the top of your article here. I don't know what to think about that. I feel quite conflicted. Like I was told that these are to be banished from polite society, and yet here they are.
Yeah, you think if we're trying to say that these are words you shouldn't be using, think of the same kind of a word art display with all sorts of things that we have for decades considered vulgar or curse words. You wouldn't put that as the big central image on your article saying, don't say these words.
Yep.
It's kind of a mixed message they've got going here.
Yeah, it certainly is. Like you said, it might be the funniest part of this article. And there's quite a bit of humor to it. All right. So
unintentional humor.
Yeah, of course.
They're not intending the humor.
Of course. So here, we'll quickly go through this and we'll make a clarification at the end here. But I think it's worth just getting these words out there. So you understand, if you want to be a polite member of Canadian society, these are words that you should get rid of. The first 3 are blackmail, blacklist, and black sheep. And as you can already probably imagine, if you've learned well from society over the last couple of years, these are all racist terms because apparently the word black is in there.
Yet we have now made a color into a racist term.
Yes.
Regardless of its context.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. However you want to reuse the word black, it has to mean. And here they quote from an anti-racism trainer and educator. We have anti-racism trainers now, and here so just so you know, the word black, it connotes. This is a quote from him. This is Joseph Smith. It says it, referring to referring to black. The word black connotes evil, distrust, lack of intelligence, ignorance, a lack of beauty, an absence of white. So whatever these terms are, by using the term black, this is what you've now communicated.
It's I don't even know what to say. Like, what are you? Do they not know the origin of these words? It has nothing. All 3 of those. It has absolutely nothing to do with the racial aspect at all. The black used in these terms is completely disconnected from
from race.
Race.
Yes.
There's nothing about race in there. So you're now just saying because we have used that word for a race, it now cannot mean anything else.
Yeah. It's there is no nuance to this.
No.
Apparently, this might be like one of the only English words that has no variance in its meaning.
Yeah.
It just is a racist term, apparently, especially when used in these kind of negative ways here. No, and other words, those are three. Other words kind of go through these. So those first three are obviously racist, so you can get rid of those now. Ghetto and inner city, again, I guess reflecting kind of negative living environments that are often populated by black communities. So apparently, whenever you say those terms, that's a negative. Even though those communities don't necessarily have to be black. And in fact, ghetto was actually was used around the Holocaust.
Yeah, it was primarily referred or used as the way of referring to Jewish communities.
Mm-hmm.
So it has nothing to do with the black communities that it's now being associated with. The connections just don't seem to line up.
No. Spooky. This was a new one.
That one shocked me a little. That's been like a kind of a fun childish term you use to refer to a ghost. Like,
yeah, that's right, isn't it? But no, apparently this apparently it because spook was used to refer to black people during World War One. Spooky is now deemed off limits in polite society. Another one's the phrase "sold down the river." Now, this is the first one they have a legitimate complaint if they base this on kind of the origin
of this phrase.
This is the idea of someone of a slave being sold down the Mississippi River. So if you want to get rid of words that kind of have a racist origin, if that's the basis, then perhaps this one would be the one criteria. I think we'll make an argument later on that even that is a bit sketchy when it comes to what we determine language to be. Grandfathered in, that was another racist one. Spirit animal, powwow, tribe. So in another linguist, professor of linguist, I can't remember. I think he's up in the University of Toronto, Mississippi, or something like that. Or sorry, Mississippi, Mississauga. He says that if a non-Indigenous person says, "This is my tribe," I don't think it's okay, despite the fact that they're using it presumably in a metaphorical way.
Tribe has been used around the world.
Yeah, in fact,
like the term tribe is just meant to be a tight group of people.
The Jews had 12 of them.
Yeah.
If you recall, like a long time ago.
Israel kind of started the tribe idea in the Bible back in the Old Testament. That's kind of
it's been around for a while, yeah. But so even if here, the interesting thing about that quote is, even if you're referring to it in a metaphorical way, like it's not really a tribe, but you can't even use it metaphorically.
Yeah.
Apparently now. Lowest on a totem pole is another phrase that you can get rid of. Savage. All these ones are kind of fit into the indigenous category. Like these are insulting to indigenous people or offensive to them, apparently, or at least to some. Again, is remember the rules of the game here is it either has to have kind of some sort of a racist origin, sexist origin, or something like that, or someone has to find this offensive.
Yeah,
that's the only criteria. So yes, I'm sure someone will find these words offensive. Gypped and gypsy. Apparently, these are derogatory slurs against Roma. So who historically traveled from place to place across Europe. It says in the article, and this perpetuates the stereotype that Roma are lower class, not mature or cultured, and foreigners. Explains Smith. This is again goes back to our anti-racism trainer. First world problem. All right. So this one's a little bit different. This is a classist term. So this makes a distinction between, us or people in the first world and those who are in the third world. And apparently it's a dehumanizing term. So it means like the people in the first world are I guess in some way more valuable and privileged than those with less, or in what we might call third world. But I'm guessing that term as well would be off limits.
I find this one really bizarre. Maybe it's my way of using the term or the phrase, but I've always considered it more a way of self-mocking our pathetic abundance. Like saying first world problems is like we're exaggerating our problems, the seriousness of our problems, because really we don't have big problems. We're mocking ourselves. Like that's the way I've thought of that term.
Yep.
Or that phrase.
I've often how it's used, I think.
I've often considered it more of a self-mockery phrase.
Yep. Now we're getting to some weird ones here, even more. Three more words that are offensive: brainstorm, blindsided, and blind spot. Again, these are offensive because it's apparently stigmatizes people who have sight disabilities.
Or in the case of brainstorm, it's if you have brain damage or some kind of
like that. Yeah.
Some kind of a disability of the
brain. Mental issue, mental problem. Dumb and lame are two other ones. Tone deaf, crippled, and I think that was it. Yep. And so those last ones again are offensive because there are people who might have hearing troubles or have physical disabilities that would find that term offensive. Remember, that is the rule of the game. I think it's important to keep in mind what the rules are, because we're going to talk about kind of some deeper issues that this might go on, might be hitting on. And now I think at this point, if you're still listening and you haven't been turned off by our lightheartedness when it comes to these apparently offensive terms, I think it should be clarified that we are mocking an idea and not people. Nowadays, sometimes that distinction is hard to make, or people just ignore it altogether. Mm-hmm. But what we are kind of making fun of is that these terms should be considered offensive, I think, is an irrational idea.
Yeah.
It's just not an idea that makes sense. Now the kind of the surface level belief that's kind of being is being used to prop up this. Why would you use these terms if someone finds it offensive? Well, you want to be kind and considerate. You don't want to be that jerk that the annoying guy who just can't get along with someone who's just a pest at work or at best, and just doesn't care about what other people think or feel, I should say. You should be kind and considerate. This is kind of the case. If you want to be polite, you just don't use these terms because people can find them offensive. As far as it goes, I'm fine with that. I think that's a fine way, or a fine belief to hold. I think what the problem here comes in, though, is that belief that we should be kind and considerate to others becomes a kind of a foundational belief. I think that's where the issue comes in.
Right.
Now, because what is happening is that when that becomes a foundational belief to be kind and considerate to others, if that's kind of the bedrock of how we should be behaving, I think what ends up happening is society becomes governed. We as individuals become governed by the emotions of everyone else.
Yeah.
So when I say a word and you find it offensive, if I want to be kind and considerate, now I have to apologize and get rid of that word altogether because you got upset by it. And so everything, or individuals end up being governed by other individuals' emotions. Like I have a hard enough time just trying to figure out my own emotions or a lot of times. But with this with the thinking that kind of goes on here, that's kind of at the kind of undergirding this list of words, is that you shouldn't say them because someone else's feelings get hurt. And I think what ends up, we see the effects of that when that becomes kind of a governing principle. Statues are torn down. We've seen schools changed, or the school names being changed all the time now.
Yeah.
Street names. We see this kind of idea of just self-censorship going on about whether or not I can say certain words and whether or not they'll be understood in the way I say them.
Yeah, it's more you're afraid of what other people will think, regardless of what your intent is. You can no longer say something with just your own intent. You have to say something under the kind of governance of somebody else's feelings or interpretation of what you're going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as I think here, I want to bring our attention to, I think, some deeper beliefs. And we've talked about kind of culture and some elements of culture. And one part of culture is its beliefs. And another part of culture is kind of these underlying beliefs, these foundational truths that we kind of hold. And if we don't get those right, I think we get really off course really fast, even with the best intentions. Like I said, I think being kind and considerate is done with the best intentions. But if you make that foundational belief, I think you have bigger issues that are going to crop up. I think one of them is if one of the beliefs that kind of gets given up if we simply act on this kind and considerate criteria is that emotions end up governing reality. When I think it gets it exactly backwards. Reality has to be governing emotions. Did I say that right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. You want reality to govern the emotions.
Yeah,
but when emotions governs reality, then your reality gets very distorted.
Yes. And so for example, and we sometimes think about emotions as these kind of flighty, uncontrollable things nowadays, particularly, but
yeah.
At least if you're not British. For example, so when your child is born, it's reasonable to feel happy. And if you don't feel happy, if you feel upset or don't feel maybe anything at all, that's actually a warning sign. I think.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that's not reasonable. If something is stolen from you, I think a lot of people in Penhold are kind of concerned by the number of crime or about the crime and that's kind of going on. And as a result, I think they reasonably feel perhaps vulnerable, upset, concerned, on edge. All these emotions.
Those emotions are reasonable.
Yes.
Based on the context of reality, that is reasonable.
Yeah. Our emotions should be kind of governed by reality. And so or at least there's a reasonable connection between our emotions and reality. If someone uses words like blind spots, powwow, tribe, it's not reasonable to feel hurt or offended. Now, and if you do, I think the question you have to ask is, why am I offended by that?
Yeah.
And not so much society has to change in order for me not to be offended. There's a disconnect between how we emotionally react to these words and reality, or how we ought to react to it. And so, yeah, society and communications shouldn't be governed by these irrational emotions. This is how even with the best intentions, I think we end up seeing a breakdown in communication. We end up seeing more divisions because we are being governed by our emotions. Our emotions, and not even ours, it's the emotions of other people that are kind of governing our reality. This person over here is offended when I say the word tone deaf. And because of that is their reality, they're saying that I have to change. Basically, their emotion has determined reality, and now I have to change that reality. And that just cannot. That's going to create a world of anarchy is probably too strong of a word, but of just a society unmoored from reality.
And one where we can't properly communicate.
Yeah.
It becomes very difficult to communicate if you can't say something without fear of how the other person's going to respond. You lose, like, when you're not able to,
or how they're going to interpret it. I guess
that's.
Yeah.
So if you have to run everything you want to say through a filter of what will they think I mean, you can't communicate, not effectively or efficiently.
Yeah, and I think that leads into kind of the second point here, is that the meaning of words has to lie with the speaker or the writer or whoever is speaking. The meaning of their words is up to them.
Yeah, so it's intent of the speaker, not impact on the reader.
Yes, at least as far as determining what the words mean.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have malicious intent, then the word you say is not what's offensive, it's your intent that's offensive. Am I saying that right?
In what?
So you could say something that the words in themselves have nothing offensive about them. There's nothing offensive there, but your intent behind them is offensive or malicious, and that can be deemed inappropriate or something you shouldn't have said. But if you say something that they're saying the words are offensive, but your intent was not in any way to deem or to cause offense, then what's the problem?
Yes. Okay. Yes. It's the, and I think you're getting on the point there of when we use words, we are putting certain meaning into them. And so for example, if I go to a sporting event and say, oh, that player was lame that night. I'm saying he didn't play a good game.
Yeah.
That's different than if I'm walking out of the building and a kid is in a wheelchair and I say, boy, that kid's lame. Like,
yeah, those
are two different meanings. Yes. And who gets to determine though what the difference there? The person who who does the talking gets to determine what his words mean. In fact, it's kind of how that has to be in place for us to communicate. There has to be some sort of common meaning. If everything is simply up to the reader or the listener, a guy could be given a speech to 100 people and they could legitimately claim to hear 100 different meanings.
Yeah.
Like if we take the meaning of words and separate it from the speaker or separate it from the author, then who gets to determine the meaning of the words? Then it's the reader or the listener. And there's just no communication that can be happening because we're not speaking on common language anymore. And in fact, now if I'm going to speak to 100 people, I have to factor in 100 different ways that it could be interpreted. Yeah. It's just impossible. So this idea of being kind and considerate, it only goes so far. If it still has to be based in reality. And I think the meaning of words is not necessarily intrinsic to, there isn't only one way each of these words can be used. And to say otherwise is I think, is to end up undercutting some really important foundational beliefs that are incredibly important to running a functional society. Yeah, there's a lot more I think we can go on, but maybe I think that's a decent place to stop there. All right, if we haven't got ourselves enough hot water, let's keep going. Bill C4 in the federal legislature got passed on Wednesday. Now, if you're not familiar with Bill C4, Bill C4 is the commonly referred to as the conversion therapy bill, or conversion therapy ban bill, I guess.
Yeah.
And initially, there was a very similar bill that was introduced in the last session of the legislature, and it got stalled in the Senate before when the election was called. And so the bill was reintroduced as Bill C4 this time around on Monday. 2 days later, it passed the House of Commons unanimously, and it didn't pass, like, say, third reading unanimously. This was tabled on Monday. 2 days later, it was passed on first reading unanimously. And what that means is that the bill jumps over all the typical steps that a bill usually goes through. It jumps over second reading and second debate. It jumps over the committee stage, where separate committees kind of analyze it. They bring in outside experts and a variety of voices to kind of analyze and study the bill. There's usually an amendment process of some kind. Then the bill comes back for a third reading and a third debate before it finally moves on to Senate.
So they really rushed it through to the Senate stage.
The only way for it to kind of skip over that is through this unanimous vote. And it was actually this motion to pass it unanimously was actually instigated by a conservative MP.
So the opposition is going right along with the leading party.
Yeah, the opposition decides to forfeit their opposition to a bill that I think rightfully deserves some deeper consideration. Now, there might be some who will argue, well, this is the same bill, or at least very similar bill to the one that got to the Senate stage in the last session. So this is just kind of getting us back on course.
Right.
And that might be a decent argument if this was the same bill, but it's not. Significantly, the previous bill limited the ban of conversion therapy to minors. So you couldn't bring a minor to conversion therapy. And I guess at this point, maybe it's worth noting, conversion therapy refers to a practice or treatment. Actually, here's how the bill outlines what conversion therapy is. Bill C4 says conversion therapy means a practice, treatment, or service designed to change a person's sexual orientation to heterosexual. B, change a person's gender identity to cisgender. C, change a person's gender expression so that it conforms to the sex assigned to the person at birth. D, repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior. E, repress a person's non-cisgender gender identity. Or F, repress or reduce a person's gender expression that does not conform to the sex assigned to the person at birth. Now, summarized, you can't try to change or make a homosexual person heterosexual, or a trans person or a transgender person cisgender. That's basically what it is. And notice the bill doesn't say anything about going the other way around.
Yeah.
So this bill actually restricts some healthcare options for the LGBT community that are still available for the heterosexual community. So yeah, so that's what's being banned. You can't go to a counselor, a pastor. I hesitate because I'm not sure where the boundary lies regarding this bill. Like, does this apply to a parent talking to their homosexual son about some of the feelings he's having?
Right.
Or if I go to a church and the pastor is preaching a biblical sexual ethic or a perspective on personhood, and he's talking about about these issues. Does that count?
Right.
These are kind of gray area, and I think a healthy area for discussion in most cases. But that was all bypassed.
Yeah, we see them not discussing it.
Yeah. Now, this bill has, I think, a lot of contention to it, particularly from Christians and so-called social conservatives, which I think we classify ourselves as, particularly the Christian. I think social conservative, I'm fine with that for its intent. So I certainly have issues with the bill, but at the surface level, this is just a ban on one particular, as the proponents would say, pseudo medical treatment. So it's just taking one option off the table of kind of medical services. And okay, that's one thing to have a conversation about. But I think there's deeper issues that are more transformative, or at least have the potential to be more transformative, than simply banning a certain pseudo medical treatment. And you see this pop up in the preamble and then a little bit later in the bill. In the preamble, it kind of lays out kind of their justification for this bill. And one of their justifications says, whereas conversion therapy causes harm to society because, among other things, it is based on and propagates myths and stereotypes about sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, including the myth that heterosexuality, cisgender gender identity, and gender expression that conforms to the sex assigned to a person at birth are to be preferred over other sexual orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions. Now, all that wording is basically to say that it is harmful if you believe that a cisgender, to use their term, cisgender identity and heterosexuality is kind of the preferred or proper, normal way thing, a healthy way things should go. If you believe that, and it might even go further than that, like if you believe that there is a distinction between male and female, even. I think this kind of encapsulate that. If that's kind of where the kind of this gender identity kind of comes in, gender expression kind of idea comes in. If you think that there is fundamental differences between what it means to be male and female, and those changes are irreversible or unchanging, according to this bill, and at least according to the preamble, the kind of the fundamental belief that's animating this kind of legislation, that's actually harmful. In fact, it's a myth. It's not even true that there's differences between male and female.
Yeah, they're calling it a myth and stereotype about these things. They're basically saying that if you believe that, it's equivalent to believing in the Easter Bunny. That's kind of the level they're putting it on.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of made up stories that we've stereotypes that we've just kind of developed over time, but actually don't have any basis in reality. Is essentially what's kind of it's being said here. And then even later on in the bill, it mentions that for greater clarity, it says this definition, talking about the gender conversion therapy definition, that this definition does not include practice, treatment, or service that relates to the exploration or development of an integrated personal identity, and that it is not based on an assumption that a particular sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression is to be preferred over another. So you can talk about these topics of heterosexuality, homosexuality, transgender, and you can talk about someone's gender and sexual identities, kind of trying to integrate them in some way, and it gives the example of gender transition. But you can only talk about it in a way where you're kind of, I guess, ambivalent to it, or you certainly can't prefer one over the other. Basically, what it's saying is that there's no difference between heterosexuality, homosexuality. There's no difference between cisgender or transgender. They're all equally normal. They're all equally healthy, and they're all equally viable choices. Or people are gonna have trouble with that word. Or ways of living.
Yeah.
Those are all morally and psychologically, they're all equivalent to one another. That's the kind of the underlying belief that I'm more concerned about. When you start messing with the fundamentals of reality, just like when we talked about the words.
That's what I was thinking. We're tying this back to that idea. We've got feelings are now forming reality instead of reality governing our feelings.
And you put yourself in a very precarious situation when you do that, because reality is undefeated at this point. No matter how you feel about reality doesn't change. And when you try to kind of go against the way that the world is, the way the world was made and set up and intended to run, you're bound to put yourself into, I think, situations, and you're going to move society, especially when we're talking about this at a society level. This is how a society, I think, starts to erode itself.
Yeah.
Our society and a culture can't go on in a healthy manner for long when it denies reality, or at least defines reality by our feelings or desired outcomes in some way.
And we're seeing this in law now. Like, this is pushing its way through to the Senate. This is potentially going to go into law. This isn't somebody saying they're offended and you shouldn't use these words. We're seeing this on a scale of federal law. Criminal code. This bill is making amendments and additions to criminal law. Yeah.
So if someone is found guilty, and so the actual crime here states that everyone who knowingly causes another person to undergo conversion therapy, including by providing conversion therapy to that person, is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term of not more than 5 years. Again, what classifies as this kind of treatment? Who knows?
Yeah.
But when you have this underlying notion, this underlying belief that's saying that it's a myth. In fact, I think they go as far as say it's a harmful myth. That's one reason why they're trying to get rid of the conversion therapy.
Yeah.
It's a harmful myth to believe that men, or that male and female are distinct and different, and that you cannot go from one to the other. That holding that belief is not accepted in this society, and so this bill is just one reflection of that underlying belief. Where is that foundational belief going to crop up next?
Yeah.
And as a result, where is that foundational belief going to be steering us? I think it's kind of interesting how we see the development of homosexual marriage develop, where it was first introduced as kind of this idea of, well, what do you care about what two people do? If two people get married, how does it change your marriage?
Yeah.
That was the argument. It was basically, it's just this one thing over here, and let us go do this thing we want to do. It has no effect outside of us.
Yeah.
But it does, because it changes the underlying definition of things. It changes the underlying definition of what marriage is. It starts to erode kind of the defining elements of father and mother when it comes to families now. And so if two men or two female want to get married, okay, we'll go ahead and do that. But now, okay, so male and female have no difference when it comes to marriage.
Yeah.
The male and female, it just doesn't matter when it comes to marriage. Okay, where else does it not matter? Well, apparently it doesn't matter when it's father or mother either, because having a child raised in a single sex family or single sex parenting apparently is no different. As the argument goes now,
Yeah.
like I said, it gets expanded. It now says that, it's no different. There's no difference between having two fathers or having a father and mother. Okay, so the mother is irrelevant, or the father is irrelevant, or they're simply identical to one another. There is no distinction there.
Yeah.
But we see how this foundational belief has kind of stretched out in these different ways into how we define marriage, how we end up defining mother and father, and now how we even define what it means to be male or female. Mm-hmm. And we're touching on some very foundational issues. And just as you mess with the foundation of a building, it's going to have ramifications all the way up the ladder there, to mix my metaphors. And so that's what I mean. I'm as concerned I am about kind of the conversion therapy bill and how it's going to be applied. I'm more concerned about these underlying beliefs and where they're going to keep pushing society, and how we're going to, what's kind of the next step in this evolution. But all right, let's to finish this up before we get too long. Let's talk about do a little bit of a lighter finish here. And so with the Christmas season starting, obviously that means Christmas movies, and probably movies we've all watched 10, 20,000 times.
Or the 5,000 Hallmark movies that come out every season.
That is not a selling point for cable for me. And so
Nope.
I don't have cable, so I don't have to worry about those. Oh, I don't even want to think about what those movies are like. Yeah, no, I'll gladly watch Home Alone on rerun.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I don't know what it is. It's funny every time, even if you know exactly the beats and hijinks that it's going to do. It's just so watchable. The first two, I do not commit Home Alone 3 and 4 to the canon. And there apparently is a fifth one, I think, coming out.
Already came out. Reviews are terrible. I'm not even going to look at it.
Yeah, I don't have Disney Plus either. I think is that who's putting it out?
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus.
Oh man. Yeah, no, you're messing with the original. It's not going to work. Like you said, I think they're being governed by their feelings towards money and not reality. if they understood reality, you just don't mess with something like Home Alone. They got away with Home Alone 2, which actually is very watchable, but it's not the same as Home Alone 1.
Just for something fun and random, there was a petition that went around trying to get Disney to remake Home Alone with Macaulay Culkin still as Kevin, and nobody acknowledged the fact that he's an adult.
Oh yeah. Nowadays with technology, all the anti-aging like that might be pushing technology a little bit.
Disney
in our watchability of it.
Yeah.
Yuck. So there's lots of those reruns. We might have to do more on Home Alone, the movie. There's some really interesting facts about it, and we might use it to kind of talk about movie culture and its effects. There's some really interesting facts about Home Alone that are quite shocking. But I'll just tease that for now. What I do want to end on is perhaps a recommendation for a Christmas movie for after the kids go to bed. And it's a movie called Fat Man. And it came out, actually, I think it's from this year.
It came out last year.
Yeah. Actually, that's right. I was listening to a podcast about the directors, and they filmed shooting in Ottawa the day before basically Canada shut their doors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Pushing it close.
Yeah. So they were right in the middle of everything kind of ramping up, and they were wondering if they're going to finish shooting Fat Man. But they got it out. And it's like I said, it's one for after the kids have gone to bed, but it's incredibly absurd, which is, I'm saying that in a good way. And what was the other definition I had put on it? I sent you a text about it.
Comically disturbing.
Comically disturbing. Yes. Basically it stars Mel Gibson in the lead. and he's Chris with a C. Um, but he plays Kris Kringle, but he's a real guy essentially, or at least that's how he's portrayed. And the one of the absurdities is that he gets paid a subsidy from the American government to deliver presents.
Wow.
Yeah, and the kind of one of the driving issues or conflicts that's in the movie is that Chris's subsidy is going down to the point he just can't afford to pay his workers, his elves, his workshop to keep going. So he's concerned about whether or not he can continue on. He just doesn't have the funds to do it. And the reason his subsidy is going down is because it's based upon the number of presents he makes and delivers. Well, kids nowadays are more troublemakers and evil than ever before. And so he's delivering more lumps of coal. And so he's not getting the subsidy he needs. And so that kind of is one element of conflict in the movie that ends up featuring a child who gets a lump of coal and ends up putting out a hit on Santa. So
oh wow,
yeah, and so like I said, it's absurd, but it's absurd in just a crazy mixed up genre kind of way.
Yeah.
I'm sure people will watch it and say, why did he make me sit through an hour and a half of this? But if you're looking for kind of a mix of holiday, thriller, shoot 'em up a little bit in there, then this is right up your alley. And it's as absurd as the kind of some of the premises go, and it's funny, the military gets involved.
Of course.
I won't kind of try to figure out how that happens, but the military gets involved. But even in the midst of all that, there's a kind of a wonderful relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Kringle that kind of goes on. That's worth highlighting, and kind of you have Chris who's really struggling with kind of the future of this job that he has, or this role he has as Santa, and he really likes it, but he just doesn't know how he's going to go on. And so he's really kind of in this depressed state, just not sure what's going to happen next, whether next year's going to happen. And yet you have Mrs. Kringle. I can't remember if they even give her a name. I'm sure it comes up somewhere, but even Chris isn't referred to as Chris very often. It's just who he is.
Yeah.
But Mrs. Kringle, she is like his number one cheerleader, really encouraging him to continue to press on, have hope, be optimistic, and really has his back throughout the whole thing. She is really unwavering in it, and critical as a result of that. So I think that's a real interesting, or it's a real relationship inside this kind of absurd package that everything else is. But nonetheless, if you're looking for something a little bit different that perhaps you haven't watched 100 times already, maybe check out Fat Man. It's streaming on Amazon Prime. They're not a sponsor, by the way, because of course they aren't. This is just Penhold Talk Radio, but it's on Amazon Prime. So if you're got nothing else to do while you're wrapping your presents, may throw this on. It's surprising. I guarantee you've never seen anything like this one.
I have to check that out.
Yeah. Anyways, well, I think we've covered a wide gamut of stories and topics today. Hopefully, something in there stirred your curiosity, made you think a little bit more, maybe made you upset. Maybe you cheered it on what we were saying. Finally, someone's saying some of these things. But hopefully you enjoyed. I thank you for coming along the journey, however you experienced it. My name is Brian Constantine,
And I'm Michael Rowland.
and this has been Penhold Talk Radio.